Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good time in the lounge, in Bali's Liquid Lounge.
That needs to stop.
I'll stop it. Okay, the Fluid Lounge. Maybe you went to some of the exhibition booths. Maybe you connected with each other. Warm welcome back. We're going to be moving to a debate now. Mm-hmm. And this debate is on insourcing versus outsourcing.
Ooh.
We're looking at the security cluster or security services
yes.
for this debate. It can be an emotive debate. I know some people are really pro-insourcing and pro-outsourcing before they've even thought about the evidence. We have a hunch or a feeling that in terms of our ideology or where we come from, that one is better than the other. Mm. And this is a chance for us to explore this. So we have 4 fantastic debaters who I'm going to introduce now. The team that is debating for outsourcing is on stage with me now. So let me introduce to you Betty Maibi. She currently works in the Northern Cape Provincial Treasury. It's wonderful to have you here, Betty. You will see Betty's bio on the air meet. She's got an interesting career ranging from local government to the governments of the Free State and the Northern Cape. She's worked in Department of Health, provincial treasuries, and she's currently responsible for budget management in the Department of Health, if I'm not mistaken, Betty. Provincial Treasury, looking at health and other departments. Yes. And she's got a master's in public administration from the University of the Free State. She's part of the team that is going to be debating for outsourcing. Her co-debater is Sipamantla Khumalo. He is from National Treasury, Public Finance Division, where he's a senior budget analyst. He completed his master's in public policy from the University of KZN. And he is currently overseeing the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. And its public entities. You are most welcome. They form the team that is going to be debating for outsourcing. On my immediate right, and joining us virtually from the Eastern Cape, is the team that is going to be debating for insourcing. So let me introduce to you Velisobuhle Buti. I was joking with him earlier. It seems that everybody who's from Kumbu likes you to know it, like the HOD yesterday from the Eastern Cape Provincial Treasury. You've got a Master's in Public Policy from the Australian University, which must have been very interesting.
Globetrotting.
Globetrotter, yes. And Veli's really interested in evidence-based policy making, policy design, civil engagement, and strategic leadership. He hails from humble beginnings and displayed hard work, commitment, and dedication, which I think we're going to see in the debate. He's passionate about mentorship and coaching, enjoys nurturing and supporting young people. So he will be debating together with Asanda Madliwa, who is joining us from the Eastern Cape. I'm hoping that we can bring her on screen. If not now, we'll be seeing her a little bit later. But Asanda, there she is in the corner. Sorry, there she is. Hello, Asanda.
Hi.
How nice to see you. Can we get the love for the Eastern Cape, please? You're also a graduate from Rhodes University, like Mbali and myself. Don't worry, we will not be influenced by these kinds of things. She also studied at UCT. She describes herself as a philanthropist, which I love, which is putting a heart to the money. And she has got 10 years experience in public sector finance management. She likes research, policy, conceptualization, financial governance, and also looks at compliance. She's a member of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. So Asanda and Veli will be debating for insourcing. So this is how it's going to work. we are going to have a round from each of our teams. They've got 10 minutes to make their first cases. When the 10 minutes is up, they will be stopped. This is one time when we'll be ruthless. So you have up to 10 minutes. If you finish earlier, there's no problem. We will take the 2 rounds, and then we will have a little bit of a chance for you to ask questions and answers and maybe raise your hands. We also encourage you actually to raise your comments or questions in the chat and in the Q&A function as we go. So please do add questions as the debates are happening. So we'll take some Q&A for about 10 minutes, and then we'll give our teams some time to respond to each other and what's coming up from the Q&A. We'll have about 10 minutes for them to refine their arguments. They'll come back and have a chance to convince you for a second round, where they'll have a maximum of 5 minutes to make their cases. And then we will have our judges deliberating, and they will be deliberating against a set of specific criteria, which will be explained to you at the end when Sibongile comes up to explain the criteria and also hand us that envelope that is the Oscar-winning debating team. We'll draw it out so that you are on the edge of your chairs. By the time we eventually announce it, I think people will be screaming for us to give that announcement in Bali. And then if we've got some time remaining, we might go back to the lounge for you to chat about what's been standing out for you about these debates. Please choose your team wisely, support them, be prepared to change your team based on how they debate. Show the love and and throw the shade with the emojis. Let's keep this live and let us give our teams a very warm welcome. Please make them feel comfortable, because there's lots of lights here on the stage, and they are debating probably views that you have. So please show them the love, and let's warmly welcome them into this debate. Bali.
Welcome.
Okay. So I think, can you see the emojis are flying up there, guys? You've got all the support. So Betty and Sipamandla, you can get us started. You are going to tell us why outsourcing is the way to go. Betty, I'm going to hand over to you to get us going.
Thank you, colleagues. Outsourcing is the way to go, because outsourcing is the way of empowering our service providers, and it is cost effective. 2 years ago, I did the spending review, which is from the comparison between insourcing and outsourcing of security services in the Northern Cape Department of Health. And the reviews revealed that the review was done between the SLA, Service Level Agreement, and the current service provider. And then the review revealed that the outsourcing is cost effective. The projections was less, with 10.2 million. And in that 10.2 million, we didn't include the operational costs of the insourcing. And mind you, the service provider is bringing its own operational costs. They have their own vehicles, they have their own equipment. And when you check, the officials are already trained. And then you go to the recruitment process. The recruitment process doesn't have the moratorium in between, the one that we are having in government. They have a pool of officials available, already trained. They don't wait. We know how recruitment is working in government. And then you go when it is a strike. Government doesn't worry about the safety of the building, of the officials that are there are not striking, because service provider will take care of that. And if we insource the security services, when we go on strike, we all go on strike. And who's going to take care of the building? And who's going to take care of the officials who are not going on strike? Over to Spa.
Good morning. I'm Sipamandla. I'll just expand on what Betty has just said, that we know that security services, security is very important, basically in general, and all of us want to feel secure. I just went through some reading this morning in preparation for this, and I was reading through some literature, and I discovered that actually the Global Peace Index ranked South Africa 10th in the world in terms of as being one of the top or one of the unsafest countries in the world, and rightfully so. I think in a few months ago, I was just moving across, moving in one of the suburbs around the country, and I saw these fences, gates, and all of that, and I was like, oh my God, security is really a serious issue in South Africa, and to also think that actually I was also doing I think that was also sparked me of being more observant on security matters, was being sparked by the fact that I was also doing a spending review last year, August, on security services of the Department of Justice. In terms of the spending reviews, and in terms of my experience with my spending review on security services that I conducted on justice, it was the fact that in many instances you find that there are requirements that need to be put in place in order for the department to successfully actually outsource. There are preconditions that must be there to successfully outsource. And one of those preconditions is that there must be an impartial assessment of the security risk that must be done for the department to successfully outsource security services, as well as that there's PCRA rates that must be prescribed to. We found that the department was not necessarily aligning with the PCRA rates. Actually, they had five shifts instead. They had 3 shifts instead of 5 shifts that are actually prescribed by PCRA. But in terms of maybe looking at some of the advantages or some of the things that you must look at, is that the pricing is very important when it comes to outsourcing of security services. And I think that if we're looking at pricing, especially when you're outsourcing, you can explore, or you can actually benefit from economies of scale, because as government, you are actually buying those services in bulk, and we as government, we must be able to actually benefit from those economies of scale, and the price is very important, because we discovered when we were doing the spending review that actually the department or government can actually benefit from actually efficiently allocating security guards in different locations. And outsourcing gives you the opportunity to actually do that, to efficiently allocate security services and set the price in terms of what is the right price, and negotiate that price. I don't think that if you are insourcing, it's easier to actually negotiate that price, but I stand corrected. I don't think that it's possible to negotiate the price. And another thing is that when we look at the opportunity to reset prices, when you are every 5 years, the contract ends if you are outsourcing, and then you have the opportunity to actually either renegotiate the contract or re-advertise re-advertise the contract and negotiate for better prices. In terms, of course, we know that this conference, it's savings at work. We want to make sure that in government we do actually save more money, and I think the pricing of things must always be at the center of insourcing and outsourcing. How can we, as maybe a thought experiment for you, insourcing team, how do we go around the issue of the price? Because we know that if you're insourcing and you recruit people, that immediately you hire them, immediately it becomes part of the establishment. That price chances are it's not going to go down; it's going to increase, over a period of time. And if you look over a period of 10 years, you would actually find that the price will always be increasing. There's also an opportunity to actually transfer if you're outsourcing, there's a possibility to actually transfer the administrative and operational burden of actually in sourcing security services, because you can basically shift that to a third party that will then take care of all of those things. And whenever there's an industrial action, you as government, you don't have to deal with that. We know that in many instances, there are strikes, and you don't want as government to be affected by a strike that, because security are actually unhappy about something, and you also shift that liability to the third party to actually take care of that aspect of things. Another issue is basically if you are, because not only security guards, security service, if you are outsourcing security services, not only security guards that you have to basically insource or outsource. So if you are insourcing, you have to also basically be prepared to do all of that maintenance and repair of security infrastructure. And we know that it's an open secret, the public works, it doesn't do well with maintenance of anything. And then in government, we actually have a tendency of not being able to maintain and repair things that need to be maintained and repaired at whatever time. So I think for me, for now, I think that is where I will just end my part of the debate.
And you did so with 17 seconds remaining.
Okay.
So let's show some appreciation for the first round. The team that is arguing for outsourcing. There we go. The love is coming to you guys. Mbali, I'm so tempted to give a summary, but I don't want to even do that, because I'm going to be accused of favoring certain points of team outsource. But there you have it, some interesting food for thought. And thank you to those who are posting in the chat. There's some interesting points being raised, which I'm sure you guys will have a look at in the break. We're seeing points from Aaron, from Raymond, from Mataba.
There's some from Lindiwe at the beginning.
There we go. I am going to encourage you all to look at these points that are being raised in the chat. Mbali and I are maintaining a very strict neutral position here, purely focusing on process, because we know the stakes are high and there's always a risk of you and I being cancelled.
Yes.
So
cancel culture is real.
It's real and it's brutal. So thank you to Team Outsource. We're now going to invite Team Insource to make their arguments. And we are joined now by Asanda on the screen, and Veli is sitting right next to me. So Veli, I'm not sure who's going to kick off. Veli will start, and he will be joined by Asanda, who will be making their arguments in support of insourcing of services. Let's hear from them.
All right. Thank you very much, Jeremy, and thanks to my colleagues as well. And a very good morning to everyone who's joining us today. Jeremy, South Africans are faced with present day realities, and they are facing a lot of problems. And these problems actually, they need some serious attention. So the context for our case is to focus on insourcing within government, given the priorities of promoting safety, and not just only through the narrow scope of trying to save cost or trying to save budgets only. There are also inherent risks that accompany outsourcing, which need to be considered. So some of the key factors that we looked at, firstly, is the need to minimize risks of exploitation and non-compliance with legislations. And I'm listening to my colleagues talking about, passing the risks, to third parties. And that is actually on its own having a lot of risk, because outsourcing opens opportunity for exploitation of workers by unscrupulous employers. I mean, some of these security companies are not even registered with the Department of Employment and Labor. They're not even registered with the Private Security Regulatory Authority, which is the governing body of private security services. And there's also quite high costs that relate to compliance and enforcing compliance with legislation for government. And just to give you some facts and figures, for example, the Department of Labor inspects over 100,000 employers, per year, and it incurs over 500 million. That's $500 million, Jeremy. And also, this excludes a number of other costs, because you also have UIF that also does its own regulation to try to see if these workers, are they even paying for UIF as well. You come to see, right, also has law enforcement arrangements. Last year it spent over 100 million, and it had to inspect 6,851 security businesses and 30,744 security officers. I mean, I'm just trying to paint the picture that, the cost of compliance in government is actually quite high, and therefore insourcing private security will minimize the risk of non-compliance and reduce the cost for government. This, of course, does not take away the need to strengthen compliance with legislation. Secondly, there's a need to reduce contractual risks and adverse audit findings, because outsourcing is also part of this fusion of audit findings, because there are a lot of contracts, there's non-compliance with SCM prescripts, and as a result, there are big problems here. There's also a lot of political influence, and there's a lot of studies that have been done that actually show that some of these private companies, actually, they belong to politicians. There's a lot of political meddling even in the awarding of the contracts. And as such, it's costs that we have to take into account. A number of times when tenders are even advertised, they are not even meeting the requirements. And as such, you have to keep re-advertising. And sourcing will ensure government, it strengthens and utilizes existing capacity, because government has a priority of promoting social cohesion and safer communities. I mean, we can attract, these security officers within government. We've got salary scales of 1 to 5, and there are a number of studies that have been even conducted in countries such as Kenya that have shown that actually when you utilize these private security companies or private security officers, it actually does promote safety in communities. And back at home, we saw in the July unrest that actually it was private security officers that were there, because there's limited number of police officers, and therefore there is scope to insource, and then you can then enhance the capacity for government to respond to these threats. And last but not least, before I hand over to my colleague Asanda, when we insource, we essentially promote information security and knowledge management. This chopping and changing of security companies, one day they are here, you are used to the guards, and then before you know it, there's a new company. It really creates a big risk of information leakages, and it also opens up government even to data breaches. And as such, there's a need to insource so that you could safeguard information security, and also and promote knowledge management as well within government. I think I will pause there and then hand over to Asanda.
Morning, colleagues, and thank you, Bali and Jeremy, for inviting us. I just want to reinforce on what Veli has said. So basically, if we insource our security personnel, we'll be creating quality and decent employment, because we've known that based on the assessment or the performance expenditure we did, we noted that the department is charged plus minus 15,000 per security guard. That goes to the service provider. But in actual fact, in the province, a security guard in grade C gets around about 6,000 to 7,000 a month. So essentially, it's just a clear exploitation. So so let's rather insource the people, so as to avoid or maybe discourage the current exploitations that we're seeing currently in our provinces. And then also by insourcing them, we're creating better staff working conditions. And also, before we insource the security personnel, obviously we would have to do a risk assessment whereby we take into account the security threats, the location, the size of the institution, because that will inform our security needs. And then it's not as if security people are specialized people. There's quite a huge pool of these people. So it's not as if it's a specialized skill. So also, if we insource the security personnel, especially the lower levels, we'll be able to be, since we're the employer of the security guards, we'll be able to negotiate salaries because we're part of the negotiation process in terms of the public sector, public service act, and also the basic conditions of employment. So in a way, we can influence how much we'll pay the security guards, obviously taking into account the risk assessment that we've done. So, because it will inform the number of security guards. Because one thing we have to note is that there's no one size fits all. We have to do a risk assessment so that we can determine actually the number of security guards that we need per facility. And then the second part, by also employing the people, they'll also contribute to local economies, because with their salaries at the end of the month, small companies, by them spending the money, the local economies, in a way, will also get funding. The second part I want to add is when we're insourcing the services, as a department or as the institution would have control and accountability. For example, if as a department I employ a company, like I employ an individual, I would have more control in that I'll be able to direct how the function of security should be performed. I'll be able to set the policies and the procedures that will be that must be followed, and also I'll be able to determine the level of the work experience of the guard that I'm looking for. And then also I'll be able, if I employ that person, I'll be able to see the skills gap and be able to sort of like know which training should I give the security personnel. And then the last part, in as much as the security personnel is employed as security personnel, but let's face reality, our security personnel have dual roles. One, especially in our clinics and in our hospitals, one, they act as security guards. And then the second part, they act as chief customer relationships. Because if you go to a clinic, the first person you meet will be the security guard, and the security guard will guide you. Okay, actually, this is where the reception area is. This is where you get the card. This is where you should be parking. This is where you get assistance. So essentially, let's just accept the role that if we insource, would have two roles being performed by one person. Thereby, we're reducing the cost because we have a chief customer relations officer and also a security guard in one. So thereby, there's one person performing two jobs, less money being spent on salaries. And then also, they also have our culture as an organization. So how can we chop and change those faces? Is it a fair thing to do? What is it going to do in our image as an institution? So as we're doing that, let's also consider those elements. I think I'm done. Thank you so much, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Asanda and Veli from Team InSource. I think judging from what's happening in the chat, you can already see that there are factions developing. And I'm interested to see how we mediate those loyalties. I'm seeing words like, but guys, it's obvious, or or I support. The emotive words are coming into the chat, which I like because people are engaging and the chat is full.
Fire.
It's on fire, yeah. Mbali and I have been tracking that and looking at that. But again, we are very scared to even single out any specific chat inputs because we don't want to be seen to be partial to one or two of the groups. So what I'm going to invite now is, if there's anybody who would like to make a comment and be brought on stage to ask one of the teams or both of the teams a specific question, we can receive you now. You have to raise your hand and obviously unmute and put your camera on, and we'll see if the tech works. It's an experiment. But if you would like to be, you need to raise your hand and we will come to you. What's hard for the teams is that they aren't seeing the chat on screen. And I know that they have coaches who are like in a boxing match waiting with water and towels for the break, where they will be feeding back to you what's coming out of the chat. So you will hear what's going on there. Please have a look in the chat for those comments. People are voting and agreeing with comments that are being made, and you can see them scrolling live as we as we in the panel here. So I'm not seeing, Mbali, any hands being raised yet. Oh, there is a raised hand. Yes, please, Fritz, if you can see if you can bring them on, please. And who do we think it is, Mbali? It is Raymond. Raymond, hello.
Hello, how are you?
There's a
Hello.
little bit of traffic. He might be coming on soon. There is Raymond. Hello, Raymond.
Hi, how are you?
We are good. We're just getting audio connection. I think you nearly sorted. We can last minute connections. I think you might be live now. Raymond, can you say something?
Hi, how are you?
We are great. It's nice to put your face on the screen. We've seen you in the chat. Tell us what you want to ask the teams.
Mine is on the infrastructure. They spoke about costs, the outsourcing part of the debate. They spoke about infrastructure costs. I wanted to know if ever, do they mean that there will be new costs being borne if ever we are insourcing? Because these facilities that people are guarding are already in our departments. And I also wanted to make some few comments. I don't know if ever you only wanted questions. Okay, the comment is that... Okay, my comment is that City of Johannesburg has already insourced. It has shown that this insourcing thing is possible. They have not had the problem of people striking. There's also the Free State province, which also insourced, if ever they look into that information. And yeah, most of the points were mentioned that this thing promotes exploitation of workers. And on top of that, when you insource people and then they have more reliable jobs, you are creating a tax base and also cutting costs on other things like education, because people will be able to afford to pay for their own kids. And in terms of regulation, everything can be regulated. If ever you are saying building needs to be assessed, similarly, if it's a government department, you'll still get the very same people who assesses private companies to come and assess the public sector facilities. So it doesn't take away anything else. The only thing that you'll be able to pay extra is when you are initially setting up, trying to have a fleet of vehicles at the beginning of that particular project. But in terms of continuous maintenance and so on, I wouldn't advise the outsourcing team to promote laziness for people not to do maintenance and say that we normally don't do maintenance. We encourage public servants to go all out and do their best. Thank you.
Thank you, Raymond. I'm seeing some responses on the body language of the teams that are sitting on my right. So you've definitely touched a nerve, and people are going to be responding to that. Thank you so much, Raymond, for your input. I'm not going to ask the panel to respond directly to this. They will include it in their deliberations with their support teams off stage. We don't see another hand, but let's put some more questions in the chat or Q&A. Mbali, I am intrigued by some of it looks like there's a bit of heat developing.
There's definitely a lot of heat developing here, Jeremy.
Yeah, there's even it sounds like there's even this comment like how so, and we'll engage on that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there,
Elaborate.
but let's keep that chat live. Direct questions now, and people starting to, I think, align themselves with the positions of the two teams. Any comments from you about what you're seeing there, Mbali?
Jeremy, I'm worried if I say anything, I'll be seen as being biased. But what I am liking that's coming out from the two teams is, the bringing in of literature and the bringing in of facts, and figures into the discussion and the debate. There's questions that both teams are posing to each other, and here, I'm really, the heat is on.
Okay, great. So, teams, we're going to invite you now to take a break. You're going to go off stage and convene with your support teams. And you've got about 10 minutes. And we're going to then invite you back on stage, and you'll have round 2. And we'll do it in the same order. And we will hear how you respond to what you've heard from your opposing debating team. And also you'll have a chance to see how you want to respond to some of the issues that have been put in the Q&A and Raymond's point. And while you're away, okay. We had a hand and then it dropped. But I think we're going to give you some time to go into your responses. Mbali and I are going to carry on chatting about this topic, and we might
gossiping.
We might express some of our own views outside of you guys seeing that. So enjoy your break, and we'll see you in 10 minutes back on stage to do the final round, and we'll see where we go. Thank you very much to our debating teams. Let's see some responses and support for them as they go off stage. Okay. Mbali, we are now a little bit free to chat, and I mean, well, I'm enjoying the teams. It felt like as they got further into the discussion, they got into their stride.
Yes.
And some facts and figures being thrown there, and also some opinions, which are not necessarily always backed up by facts and figures, but you can see that there's clearly pros and cons for each team.
Yes. And actually, at this present moment, it seems as though there was a poll. Can you just check, Jeremy? Is there a poll?
We're not doing the poll now.
We're not doing the poll now.
We're going to do the poll when they've finished their second rounds. But just, that's a good point, Mbali. You will also be asked as the audience to express your opinions on these two teams. But we'll launch those polls when they finish their second rounds.
Correct.
But Mbali, I mean, this is not a new topic.
No.
And I know that the spending review, or the Pepper team, has been doing some research in this area. So
yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys have been researching and what you've been finding in the studies that you've been doing?
Thanks, Jeremy. So you are correct. It's actually quite a hot topic. We've had, I think, over 5 spending reviews that have been done in this area. And actually most, if not all of them, are concerned around whether insourcing or outsourcing is best. So we thought, why not allow for a live debate on this particular topic to hear from face value what the officials themselves have to say about this topic. And really the common threads in the problem statements from these previous spending reviews on expenditure of security services included us having to find the need to find opportunities in realizing efficiencies in the deployment of security services and adopt more cost-effective procurement strategies in cases where we do insource. But also there is a recognition that historical double-digit growth in expenditure are really unsustainable and are taking away resources from other departmental objectives. And there's obviously a need to base future improvements in security services and the expenditure thereof on verified data and analysis. So, and we're here today, we want to establish really whether insourcing is in fact a better service delivery than outsourcing. And we will soon find out.
So we will indeed. Mbali, how does one go about doing a spending review on security services? I'm just thinking, you have to do quite a bit of research.
Yes.
You have to get your problem statement sorted out. You need to find the data. You need to analyze it. And in a sense, what we're hearing now is, what do people do once they've actually done a spending review? They make an argument. So I've got two questions for you. The one is, tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of doing a spending review in the sector. And then also, now we act on what we know.
Yes.
So how does one start to navigate the sort of organizational maze of making a convincing argument to the various clusters, committees? I mean, what happens when you've done a spending review?
Yeah, that's a tough one. But I'll start with the mechanics of undertaking a spending review. So as you all may probably be aware, it's a 6-step methodology, and it's quite heavily reliant on data. And by data, I mean both financial data as well as non-financial data. And I think with the financial data, it becomes a bit tricky because in instances where it is outsourcing, that data you won't easily find on BAS. So highly likely on BAS, you'll probably find one line item. So that means you need to start digging some more for this data. You can either go on the LOGIS system, which is a procurement data system in government. And sometimes actually some of these, this information or this data you're looking for lies within internal systems in those departments that do outsourcing of security services. So it requires a lot of interaction. It requires relationships, good relationships between yourselves and the program managers in those departments where you're undertaking a spending review. So really, it requires you to engage fully in that space, immerse yourself in that space to start understanding what is the money buying, where is the money going, and are we actually getting value for money? Is it worthwhile going for insourcing versus outsourcing? And then once you get to that point, obviously backed by evidence because of the data, you then start a negotiation process with the departments. And obviously that's never going to be easy or hardly ever easy. But, evidence is evidence and facts is facts. So once you have the information there for the department, you then start the discussion around what you have found, what the numbers are saying, what the data is saying, and you take the conversations from there. And as I said yesterday, it's not good enough for you as a budget analyst to know how the program is performing, to know how security services are spending. But if the relevant people do not know that, then the decisions that need to be taken won't be taken because only you are sitting with the information and you're not taking it to the relevant places and the relevant platforms as well.
I like the way you answered the first part of my question and then looked at me because you don't want to answer the second part. We'll come back to that. I'm also just appreciating what's happening in the chat. Some interesting points being debated actually on the chat too. And the last few comments are talking about identifying risk. And also, I think a hybrid model. This is interesting because without referring directly to our teams, it seems like a blanket position needs a lot of, you can't say, I suppose in general, I'm pro insourcing or I'm pro outsourcing. There's a bit of a nuance here, and you have to look at the risks and the particular context of each case on its own merits. And I suppose this goes back to evidence.
Yes. And I mean, obviously, as you're saying, context matters. It's a very complex space. You can't make the decision on whether insourcing is better than outsourcing purely based on cost. There are other things around, the crime rates in the area, the size of the building. So context is really important when you make a decision on whether you want to insource or outsource your security services.
And I love the way the teams are looking at these real areas of I suppose, complexity is, how do you manage staff? How do you treat staff?
Yes.
What are the issues that come up when you engage private sector?
Yes.
Are you able to monitor contracts? Are you able to be disciplined on that?
Yes.
And I think when we get a little bit, I don't know whether I can use the word sort of lazy, we revert to position.
Correct.
As opposed to context and evidence.
Yes.
And then we say, oh no, but I'm a person who's my ideology says that, your ideology says
Yes.
that, and we start having a nice political fight. Whereas in fact, it seems to be, I mean, judging from our teams, that they've got passionate views and evidence
Yes.
to support their own positions. And I'm intrigued how they're going to come back and see if they can convince us of why they're right and why they're wrong.
It's really a tough one. I don't want to be in their position because it can't be easy to decide whether or not should you insource or should you outsource.
Yeah, I think we're getting a sensitivity to the dilemmas that our principals face. Yesterday when we were talking about personnel analysis, and what does one do in the context of limited finance and big demands?
Correct.
And it is not easy, just as this one is not easy. But as we know, as we've learned through spending reviews, the evidence and the data is your friend.
Yes.
If you want to make an argument, make sure you've got something to base it on.
Yes. Back it up.
Back it up, exactly. So we've got probably about 2 minutes left now before our debating teams come back on. Maybe I can just tell our audience, Mbali, that we have an adjudication panel.
Yes.
And we've put some checks and balances in place because we know that the competition is tight. So just so you know, the adjudication team is working at an undisclosed site. And there are 3 people that are actually applying some criteria. Molachadi Mojapelo, Anita Ruela Marira, and Anita, I hope I didn't get your name wrong.
You definitely did.
I did. How do we, please, Mbali?
Ruela Mira.
Okay, there we go. Ruela Mira.
I hope I didn't butcher it.
Exactly, we'll find out. Anita is the second team member who is on the adjudication panel. And we also have Sibongile Nkosi, who makes up the third person. In order for them to remain true to the criteria, we have Hermie Bahrain as well, who will be exercising oversight on them. So we have a very rigorous process. So that when we do get the answer to how the adjudication panel has applied the criteria to the 2 teams, we can have some faith that a good job has been done. But you will also have your own opinions, which is why we'll open up a poll for you also to express yourselves in that. So, Mbali, I think we've probably got just over a minute left before they're coming on. And I hope that they are starting to come closer to the studio. So the team that is supporting them, if you can put your finishing touches to how you'll be debating in round 2, now's the time to do that. And I'm hoping that they'll be joining us in a moment. Mbali, what else on this?
Do you want to go through the chat quickly?
Let's see if there's anything more that we have here. I think, here's an interesting point around transparency and risk. Chance taken. So there's some interesting themes developing. I'm looking to my left. Can I ask, Londi, are they ready? Okay, brilliant. Okay, let's welcome them back. We'll pick up our discussion later, Mbali, but debating teams, please come back onto stage.
Imagine a huge round of applause.
Yes. Can we hear the crowds, please? There's Mexican waves happening in the audience. Yes, here we go. Okay. Welcome back. You're looking remarkably calm. I suppose you're looking confident.
It's the confidence.
It's the confidence. Okay, so let's get straight to it. Team Outsource. Betty and Sipamandla, you've got 5 minutes to convince us. Let's hear from you.
Okay. I just have to deal with the issue of the risk of exploitation. I think that exploitation is everywhere, whether you are insourcing or outsourcing. It's just a matter of how you deal with that exploitation. In the case of outsourcing, there is, an opportunity to strengthen, the implementation of the service level agreement to make sure that aspect is actually that exploitation is actually dealt with. And we had that. You have these contracts, then there needs to be compliance with those contracts. And there was a misconception that as the outsourcing team, we are advocating for laying off of workers. That is not true. We are saying that the workers that are there must still remain there. What we're merely saying is we are just presenting a case to say our case is that outsourcing is much better because there is an opportunity to save costs. And just because you're outsourcing, it doesn't mean that you are actually taking jobs away from the people that are insourced. On the issue of corruption that you raised, that politicians, interfere in the thing in the processes of procurement. That is true, but there isn't evidence that you've presented that actually insourcing will actually breed a different outcome. That insourcing does not have any kind of corruption in that instance. You raised a key point as well on the leakages of information, which I think has been out there as the literature has indicated that there's leakage of information because you're outsourcing. Yes, that has been hearsay. I haven't been presented with evidence to suggest that is actually a fact. It could be, for instance, it could be misinformation. It could be propaganda. It could be any other thing in terms of that. So information can leak. It can leak whether you are insourcing or outsourcing. If there's no proper vetting of the processes of the security guards, whether insourcing or outsourcing, the leakage of information is all the same. I just want to raise before you come in, Betty. Outsourcing reduces the pressure on the government wage bill, because we understand that the Minister of Finance actually indicated that personal expenditure would increase from 665 billion in 2022-23 to 702 billion in 24-25 at an average annual rate of 1.8%. That is nearly $1 trillion. How do you wrap your head around that? We are in the process of, as government, of actually reducing the wage bill, and if you are pushing for, we know that there's already insourcing that is there, but if you are pushing for more insourcing, then how then would you deal with the issue of the ever increasing wage bill?
Siphamandla, I'm just going to let you know you have less than a minute left.
Okay, so you have to consider that that issue, that we can't increase the wage bill. So maybe you need to wrap your head around that issue. Again, we also spoke to the allocation of security guards, that you can allocate them differently, and we also want to reemphasize the fact that security guards, if you are insourcing, you insource them at salary level 5. When if you are outsourcing, you actually insourcing them at salary level 5, but when you're outsourcing, you're actually outsourcing them at salary level equivalent of salary level 3 and even below.
Let's say thank you very much to Team Outsourcing. It is so hard for me to do this. It's a hard stop with the time. The rules have to be fair. Those were the closing arguments of Team Outsourcing. Thank you very much. Let's now move to team insourcing and hear your closing arguments. Over to you, Veli.
Okay, thanks, Jeremy. I think in terms of closing remarks, there's a big consensus, even in terms of the comments and the discussions on the chat, because linked to the point I was talking about around realities and people facing realities because they are seeing corruption and they're experiencing it on a day-to-day basis. It also reemphasizes the point about looking at the total cost of compliance, because compliance is very costly. It's not just the amount that is paid or the rate that is paid to security service providers, but you actually have to look at other cost elements. When CIRA does joint operations, it does it with the South African police. It's visible police officers who are actually deployed to those areas, and they're finding a number of cases, and there are actually a lot of criminal cases that were opened even in the previous financial year, and I would invite my colleagues to actually look at that data because it actually does exist. The other point that we just want to reemphasize is that you really need to tighten regulation. You really need to make sure that you streamline recruitment processes, and we even have, moratoriums or even regulations that we could put in place, such as making private security services part of the essential services, which could limit, likelihood of strikes. And my colleague Betty actually said that there are no strikes when you go for outsourcing. And the question that we pose back is that when last did government go on strike? Which actually reemphasizes the need that you really need to tighten your regulation environment. And on the issue of the wage bill, actually, I do agree that there's a need to contain the wage bill. But in terms of facts and figures as well, we've not been having wage increases over the past few years, and government, as we speak, is putting on the table 3% increase. And then when you juxtapose that with CIRA rates have been increasing about 9% over the past few years, and then you ask yourself who's controlling the wage bill much better, government or the route of outsourcing? Clearly, government has been really making a lot of efforts to try to contain the costs in that regard. I'll then hand over to Asai as well to make her own remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Veli. We'll be getting Asa on in a moment. Okay, we're just pausing. We've hit pause. There's a technical challenge. So as soon as we get Asa back, we will start the clock and we'll continue with team insource. I'm hoping that we don't have too much of a technical issue, but these things happen.
The pressure's on everywhere, Jeremy.
Yeah, we can feel it in the studio. Okay. Well, let's see. So that Veli, the team is trying to reconnect with Asa. If we can't, you'll have a little bit more time to say what she might have said. This is unprecedented terrain, guys. Let's see if we have managed to get. We're still trying, so I will just carry on chatting while we deal with the technical challenge. Mbali, I know the temptation is to give the other team a little bit more time, but we can't do that.
We can't do that.
I know. So we are also going to be having a poll in a moment, and I will tell you what that poll is for now. I think we're going to be asking 3 questions, Mbali. The first is whether people support insourcing or outsourcing. I think those are the first 2 questions, and we might be asking another question as well. We'll give you options. A third option might come in, but don't
let the cat out the bag.
Let me not let the cat out the bag for now. We are still trying. I don't know if there's load shedding somewhere, which is getting in the way of the. It does this, the networks, which is a little bit frustrating. Mbali, is there anything else coming out of the chat that you...
Well, the chat is blazing still. We're seeing various people for insource, others are for outsource. We have CFOs also in the chat here, which work closely in this expenditure space. There's also budget analysts, which also work closely in the space. And it's different views. We can't say everyone here is opposed to insource. And we also can't say people in the chat are opposed to outsourcing. And I see Asanda is loading. Are we good to go, Jeremy?
I think not yet, but she's loading. We are almost ready to go. So I think people are beginning to relax. I can feel Veli on my right starting to calm down. The heat. Yeah, okay, she is back. Asanda, welcome back. And we will continue the clock as soon as you start speaking. Welcome back.
Okay, can I do my closing remarks now? Am I audible?
Away from a imagine the excitement. The emojis are going
wild.
Yes.
Welcome back, Asanda. Let's hear from you.
Thank you. Just in closing, let's just food for thought. Should we continue putting reliance on SEM processes that are open to corruption, or maybe should we place reliance on our HR recruitment processes? Of which, if we do place our reliance on HR recruitment processes, these can always be tightened, whereby would introduce more of change management and more of behavioral change instead of sticking with the current norm of laissez-faire. And also another point to make, maybe if we do let's say, for example, the security function, why maybe don't we consider like setting up a safety and security department that will oversee and control and direct how the security function in government works, like we have for public works, whereby they look after the properties of the entire state. So maybe we should consider such. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Asanda. Thank you for the succinct summary at the end there. There was, I think, Veli, you are finished as well. So we are going to close the debate now. And can we please just congratulate our two teams, our four members, for navigating some tricky technical terrain and time limits. But Mbali, I think we can give them a round of applause.
We definitely can. Well deserved.
And applaud each other. We are done. So now the adjudication team is busy finalizing their views. And we are going to just carry on chatting a little bit, Mbali, while we wait for Sibongile to enter the room.
Yes. How much time do they have, Jeremy?
They have no more than 5 minutes to get here with their answer. And what we're going to do now is invite our audience to look at the poll. So we've published a poll in the chat, and Mbali, if you can also have a look at your screen. I am wishing that my eyes were better to be able to read the poll on the screen that I'm looking at, but maybe you can tell us what we are seeing for the poll. What is it saying?
So we have the first question here. It's asking, which team is your favorite? Are you team outsource or are you team insourcing? We also have our second question here, which is, sorry, let me just expand here.
There's a technical problem?
Yes,
okay.
My view on the topic is outsourcing is best, insourcing is best, and the last option is it depends on the context. So those are for the neutral people.
Okay. So there you have it. And you can access the polls on the top right of your screen. There's a little icon that says polls. Please click on that to access the polls. And please vote, and we'll see where people are standing with who their favorite team is. So this is the subjective one. And then also where you stand in terms of your own views on whether insourcing, outsourcing is the right way to go, or whether context is also the determinant of how one looks at things. Of course, there are many more options, but we thought we'd give you those three to get started. Before I ask Sibongile to come to the stage, Mbali, what are your thoughts at the end of the process? Do you think the debate works? I can see that on some of our team there was some big eyes at one point.
Yeah.
So I'm wanting us to reflect on that and see how are you and me at the end of this, having to sit with this dynamic and the energy and excitement on our right, and of course in the Eastern Cape with Asanda.
Definitely, Jeremy. I think this debate really got the chat moving. People were fully, engaged in the chat. You could hear various opposing views and people sort of challenging each other. So although we had a live debate here, there's also a very active debate happening in the chat, which is wonderful to see the various views and opinions. And some is actually backed by evidence even here as well. So it's great to see.
Great. Yes, we are so about the evidence, if you haven't heard yet. If you don't have the evidence and only a loud voice, we will just hear your loud voice. But when you've got a loud voice and evidence, it gets very interesting. Mbali, we're going to welcome Sibongile Nkosi to the stage. And I think we're going to stand up to dignify this moment. So Sibongile, if you would come to the stage, you're going to tell us about the work of the adjudication panel. Let's applaud you. Welcome to the stage. I think we can all be seen. There we go. You can see the stage. Welcome to the bright lights.
Looks good in here.
It does. It looks good in here. So Sibongile, if you just speak, put the mic up to your mouth so we can hear you. Tell us about what you guys were doing while we were in here.
All right.
You have to put the mic right up.
Oh, I'm not used to this.
Not used to it. You're a natural.
Online, with the online. So are you able to hear me now? Okay.
Okay.
So thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be here. I just want to also thank you, my fellow judges, for undertaking this difficult and important task with diligence of, adjudicating this debate session. So basically, Jeremy, we had a criteria that was set for us to utilize to come up with the winning team. Of course, they are all winners, but we had to sort of, for the purposes of transparency, the criteria entailed looking at the team that provided well-structured and persuasive factual information. And we basically looked at evidence-based compelling arguments from both teams. We also looked at the delivery style of the teams, the tone, their voices, the clarity of expression, how persuasive they were, and how they responded and identified gaps from each side and sort of capitalized on those when they came back for the second round. So we really applaud both teams, but unfortunately, we have one winner. And we really also just want to thank them for the time they've taken and the effort to prepare. We know how much it takes for you guys to do the research and analyze the information. You provided figures and facts for us, like Mbali said. So we also look at that. And considering that, Jeremy, this is for capacity building over and above just sharing information with our participants, we also just want to capacitate ourselves and capacitate the teams, in which we did very well. So without any further delays, I will just hand over the envelope. These results have been audited. We have an independent auditor. Who has gone through to ensure that we were not biased in any manner.
Sibongile, thank you so much. Really appreciate the rigor and the commitment and passion that you guys displayed in your job. So, this is like the Oscars. So I'm going to have a long talk now about something else. So you all hang on to the edge of your seats and wait for the answer. But I'm actually going to ask Mbali I'm going to open the envelope. And in fact, I'm closing my eyes. Mbali, you're going to have to announce.
It's too much. Okay. And the winner is, we have Insourcing.
There we go. Congratulations.
Congratulations, Insourcing.
There we go. The crowds are going wild. Asanda, we can't see you, but I'm sure you're shining there in the Eastern Cape. Congratulations.
Some good team spirit there happening.
As Sibongile says, actually, sure, there's a winner, but there she is. But everybody who participated in this, we really want to thank, because it's about moving from what we know into action. And part of that is articulating the compelling case. And we've seen great work from both teams. So from Mbali and myself, thank you so much. We are bringing this to an end. We will have a look at the poll in a moment.
Yes.
But we also encourage you to spend some time in the lounge talking to each other and in the fluid space around what has been standing out for you about this debate. I'm going to ask for the time now.
The time is 22:11.
Yes,
Jeremy.
so we're running a little bit over schedule. We're going to take a 10-minute tea break. And when we come back at 10 to 11, we're going to go into our next session where we're going to hear from two people around how they have been using spending reviews in their work. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for being so active in the chat. We got the debate going. And thanks once again to our two great teams and to our adjudication panel. We will see you in 10 minutes. Thank you.